And thank you everybody for being here and attending. I'm thrilled to present this. As you are thrilled when you see an image like that. It's a meeting, everybody loves them. Well, if you don't, you're definitely not alone, especially lately. You're definitely in very good company. But as fun as it is to complain about how meetings are bad, meme about that, this is a real problem. Like a few years ago, Doodle had a survey, and they tried to quantify how much money was spent in unproductive meetings. And it was yearly around the GDP of Belgium, so that's nothing to scoff at. But then the question, if we want to solve a problem, is, well, why? Why do meetings suck? And according to the Harvard Business Review, which is not a peer-reviewed journal, but still better than your average magazine, there are a few main reasons, and I focus on three of them. Well, the first one is, we have too many meetings, which makes sense if you think that they are not very productive. I mean, you have to make up for that, right? But two of very interesting reasons are that, often a few people dominate the discussion in meetings. I guess most extrovert people are just speaking more. Maybe they have more to say, or maybe they have less to say, but they really want to say that nevertheless. And the third thing that is also very important is that a meeting is unproductive if after the meeting you don't know anything new, or you don't do anything new. So you don't have a follow-up list of things to do. And I think that if we focus on the last two, it has some positive repercussions on the first one as well. But how? So I guess two of the main questions that we should be able to answer to find a solution are, who spoke during the meeting and for how long? Do we have somebody that actually spoke for 95% of the time? Well, to do that, we must have a time measure. And also, we kind of need to have some content analysis. So what is actually something that needs to be followed up after a meeting? To do that, unfortunately, there's quite a few other things that we must do in a meeting. Just to start, if we want to solve this problem, we must probably record the meeting so that we have some data to work on. And then we might decide or not to enhance the data somehow. And then let's start with the time thing. Well, we need to perform what is called diarization, which in practice is just answering the question who spoke and for how long. So we want to have some form of data that is something like that. You have a number of speakers, a timeline of the meeting, and for how long everybody spoke. That's diarization. And I tried to do that. I built a very small web app, which in the end wasn't a great idea. Probably another format would be better, but that's what I did anyhow. And you can start a meeting, which means basically start recording a meeting, or you can upload a WAV file that comes from a previous meeting. And then, quite easily, here you get a distribution of speakers. So we have, for example, here a speaker number 8 that spoke for 30% of the time, over 8 people, pretty good. And we have a transcription of the meeting. That's pretty good. How I did that? Well, thanks to somebody else. There are some very powerful libraries in Python that are already there, and they work pretty well, even without fine-tuning in my case. So I was pretty satisfied looking at that. The results are all right, not perfect, of course. The transcription can have some issues every now and then. But that's, I think it's already usable. So yeah, problem one solved. That means that we still have another one and maybe more chances of, real challenges. And so now we have a transcription of the meeting. We should understand what is material for a follow-up. If we were to summarize the meeting, if we were to have a discussion in the end and say, okay, after this meeting, these are the things that I really should tackle. These are the things that I really should do. Well, we should have a classifier. And the problem in this case is that it is really hard to find that kind of data. There's, as far as I know, no corpus that has that. And most importantly, not everybody will have the same data that he or she or they consider relevant. So to tackle this problem, I took inspiration actually from a nice piece of software from Marcus, who mentored my project quite nicely. And I saw this WhatsApp message classifier well, it has 8 classes. It takes a WhatsApp chat and it tells you, well, was it a question, this particular sentence, or was it a greeting, an explanation? And when I saw that, I was like, yeah, that's probably a very nice data set that he used to do that. But actually, well, it's a relatively small data set, especially if you consider it as 8 classes. So I set onto a very similar journey, and I created my own data set. So I took the E-liter. I still have no idea how to pronounce that. That's a corpus that basically it appears both in Czech and English. It is basically a transcription of minutes of meetings. And I went through a few of them and I, well, annotated that, indicating if it was either something worthy of follow-up after a meeting or not. I was also not super thorough. The dataset size is rather small, 101 per class. And the reason is mainly because things that are worthy of follow-up are rare in the total number of sentences pronounced in a meeting, which tells that, yeah, they might be a bit unproductive after all. And yeah, just based on that, I used a very similar approach that Marcus took. So standard machine learning, nothing deep learning, because, well, we didn't have enough data for that. And I tried a few different models, nothing super fancy, although, I mean, XGBoost tends to perform well on everything. So in the end, I decided to stick with stacking classifier. So it's a sum of all these models, and then it has a random forests as a meta model. In the end, the results are all right. Of course, I tried it on a data set that I had. So it's a YouTube meeting from a Scrum review, and I tried to go through the data and see how the classifier was working. And it's a bit small to read the content, but I would say that, yeah, that's 70% accuracy, 70% recall was understandable. So we have quite a few sentences that are actually something that, yeah, I'll ask Jessica to resend that to you. I mean, I could see how that could be interesting to have noted down at the end of the meeting. For example, please do read that. and it's referring to a specific book that they will review in a subsequent meeting. It's pretty good to have that in the end noted down. I mean, other things less so. But still, I think that the performance is pretty good considering the data size. And of course, if we have users adding in the end like a check mark, if that was actually useful or no, that wasn't useful at all, we increase the data set size pretty quickly, considering how many meetings we have. So we might get pretty quickly to deep learning size. And and then based on that, we can actually perform further analysis. For example, what I wanted to focus on, because I thought it would have been useful for me in my previous meetings to have, is how many follow-up arguments have been raised by each person. Like how many things actually we will follow up and it was due to that or the other person. And another measure, how many of these arguments were per second. So you also have somehow a measure of how concise somebody is, which is something that I have very much at heart. And on that note, that's where my work ended. So I'll be concise and try to conclude saying that there's the follow-up points to my work. That there's plenty of stuff that can be done to make a similar tool or to make this tool actually applicable to other situations. One thing that I really wanted to do, but I didn't find the time, was to create a data set of voices and perform speech recognition so that instead of having speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, you have Adam, Paula, Kevin, and so on. A summarization of the meeting. We have one type of summarization, what I would call extractive, or it is usually called extractive summarization. It could be nice also to have another type of summarization that doesn't really have to do with follow-up actions only, but just in general is a minute of the meeting. And also, I mean, if you have any comment on what other metrics would make sense and how many, what metrics could be a nice, a nice measure of how productive or how nice a meeting is. I thought about, for example, silence to speech ratio. If you have 5 minutes of almost silence at the beginning, probably means that somebody was waiting. So that's not super productive. But if you have any other idea, I would be super keen to hear that. And with that, thank you so much for listening. And if you can, if you have any idea, you want to contact me for anything, here you can.